In the book of Exodus, chapter number 32, Moses has been on the mountaintop with God. While he was up there, God gave him what we call the 10 Commandments on 2 tablets of stone written on both sides. After receiving the 10 Commandments, he is now headed back down the mountain to relay the message of God to the people of Israel. As he comes off the side of the mountain, one of the young men, his associate Joshua, which would later take over, met Moses coming down the mountain. I pick up my text in verse 15. And Moses turned and went down from the mount. And the 2 tables of the testament were in his hand. The tables were written on both their sides, and on one side and on the other were they written. And the tables were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God graven upon the tables. And when Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said unto Moses as they were coming off the mountain, there is a noise of war in the camp. Notice that terminology. There is a noise of war in a camp. Joshua was picking up on the attitude and the atmosphere of what was being said among the people. And he looked at Moses and said, it sounds to me like these people are making a noise that will lead to war. I want to preach today on the controversial subject. I understand. Not everybody preaches this way. Not everybody likes to hear it this way. But this is me, and you are you. And we're going to bring the Bible just as tight and right as God penned it down a long, long time ago. I'm preaching today on the subject, there's a noise of war in the country. There is a noise of war within our country. When I was converted 42 years ago, I never dreamed that our homes would be shattered. I never dreamed that our churches would be so worldly. And neither did I dream that our nation would be so divided as it is the day wherewith we now live. Our last voting has proven to us yet once again that America is split right down the middle. You call it black or white, conservative or liberal, socialist or moderate, whatever terminology you pin on it, you do realize this country is divided. If history repeats itself, as we say it does, then our nation is being directed toward another war within our own borders. Signs, statements, and situations are so intense that even newscasters now are getting on television and asking people on all sides to dial back on their range of temperament according to their beliefs. Between anger, frustration, and social control, our national interest has been pushed aside and replaced with power-hungry leaders determined to take all their opponents down. Now, I know some people will call in and write. We get hate mail, cuss mail. I got a death threat this week. You always get people that's upset because you tell the truth. But just because I'm a realist doesn't make me a troublemaker, nor does it make me one that says I have a desire to ramp up conflict and discord within our country. But it's so easy for politicians and humanity to point their finger at a man of God when everything is turned upside down and chaotic. You remember when Elijah met Ahab and they stopped together and Ahab pulled up to him, being the president of Israel, and he looked at Elijah, the prophet of God, and said, "Art thou he that troubleth Israel?" And Elijah looked at him and said, "I got news for you, big boy. It ain't preaching that's got Israel in this mess. It's a bunch of you low-down, sorry, henpecked politicians that's got Israel in the mess that she's in now." It's not the preacher's fault that America is divided. If you will read history and study the Civil War with an open mind, you'll find out that there was more than one issue that contributed to the motive for what we call the First Civil War, the bloodiest war the world has ever known. There was not one component that made that war come to pass and come to a reality. There were three major components in all reality that brought the First Civil War. The first one was the increase to high taxation among the working class people. It was Abraham Lincoln that had offered such a tax down to the southern people that there was no way they could pay their bills, pay their taxes, and make a living. The government decided they were going to break down the working family's profits. Now, I'm not being mean. I am a tax-paying citizen. So don't none of you egg-sucking, pug-nosed liberals write me and say, yeah, you 501c3 preacher. I'm not a 501c3 preacher. I pay my taxes just like a janitor, just like a pilot, and just like you do. I've never been exempt from my taxes. So because I'm a tax-paying citizen, I can say anything I want, anytime I want, about anything about what our government is involved in and what's going on in the national conflict. But from January 1st till June 21st of this year, every penny I made in my life for 6 months was taxes. We have raised in a government back in the Civil War. They were bringing in a government that would take over, tax the people so high that it would put them out of business, and that the average person would become codependent on the government to feed them, send them a check, pay their housing, and take care of them the rest of their life. That is the same avenue I see America going down right now. Men do not want to work. They have no initiative to work. They want the government to feed them. They want them to pay their check. They want them to buy their groceries and set it home with no responsibility. Say amen. And that's exactly one of the reasons that it incited the Civil War. The second one is the common one that probably all of us know, and that is what we call slavery. Slavery is the bondage, the selling, and the abuse of human life. Slavery was brought into this country. People were robbed from their native lands, brought to America, sold like animals, and many times even treated like animals. I am not for slavery. I have never been for slavery. I have never condoned slavery. No human ought to be sold like an animal on a block somewhere and treated like an animal without a proper opportunity to be free, to prosper, and to fulfill their dreams. That is what the United States of America is about. It's not about slavery. I've always been against it. Look at me. I will always be against slavery. God is against slavery. Now, the third thing that brought the Civil War was what we call states' rights. It was then that Abraham Lincoln thought that America would be a more unified United States if the federal government made all the decisions and took away state rights. I live in Tennessee, and if something came up that I don't appreciate or can't comprehend and be settled and comfortable in my spirit, I have a right to move to another state that may be more into my conservative vein. That's freedom in the United States. You don't have to live here. You can go anywhere you want. And they fought against it because the federal government wanted to sit in Washington, D.C. and tell everybody how to live in Virginia and everybody how to live in Tennessee and everybody how to live in Mississippi. And the state right and the state vote and the state voice of the people had absolutely no control and no say-so within that state. That was the third reason why the Civil War came. It was to keep laws within states and the federal government from taking over. And for those of you that thought that was a good idea, how's the federal government working for you now, baby? It's the biggest mess we've ever seen in the history of this country. Now there's enough Americans, liberal and conservative, that are waking up to the fact that every state ought to have their own voice and their own right within their state lines. Now, just like there were three premium ideologies, that brought what we call the first Civil War, I see three things on the horizon that will contribute to the motive that will lead down the same path that we call national conflict. I don't know about you, but there's an uneasy feeling in the air as I travel this nation. I listen to people from all viewpoints, and to be honest, their comments are rather disturbing. Even those uninvolved in politics, governmental leaders, or even party affiliations are showing great levels of concern about the future of this nation. Would you take just a few minutes and allow me to address the most revealed issues at hand that people say will divide America, either in the near future or, sadly to say, even sooner? What are the three things that are raging in this country that are causing people to rise up? I want to mention them. They're controversial. Most preachers wouldn't touch these with a 10-foot pole because they're scared of their people, they're scared of the television, they're scared of the internet, they're scared of lawsuits, they're scared of liberals, they're scared of politicians, they're scared of atheists, they're scared of the LGBT, they're scared of everything that's coming on, so they just bury their head in the sand and act like nothing's happening. I tell you what's about to happen. This country's about to be called the war within itself. That's what's about to happen if something don't change. Turn around and get on a different vein. Now, let me mention the three things very quickly. The number one thing that I find across this country that's going to call our country back into war is what we call racism. The racial tension in America is higher now than it has ever been in my lifetime. It seems like everybody wants to classify what kind of life matters. White lives matter. Black lives matter. Blue lives matter. And everybody has taken out their indigenous sect of color, pigmentation, or race and decided that their lives are the ones that matter. But may I say to you a little song that we used to sing in Sunday school? Red and yellow, black and white, they are all precious in His sight. All lives matter equally in the sight of God. And for those of you liberals that don't like me anyhow, that includes the life of the unborn that are safely tucked away in the wombs of their mother. Their lives matter just as much as yours do. Racial tension is at a disgraceful height in our country. Rioting in the streets, businesses being looted, people being hurt and killed, all over color. Can you imagine a liberal newscaster that covers the United States of America said last week on television in America, the biggest terror threat in America is white men? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my 59 years of life, and that news media ought to fire him. They ought to throw him out of the studio because it's that kind of nonsense that is invoking racial tension. Everyone wants their rights, but they all neglect the fact of human equality. I've learned that respect, balance, and compassion goes much further to solve a problem than hate, fear, and harm. No race should feel inferior because of their color. Neither should any race feel guilty because of the improvements they have made over time. The race card has been used by all sides to the point where it has become an international embarrassment. Nobody's happy with the way God's made them anymore. Black people try to straighten their hair. White people try to kink their hair. Black people are trying to bleach out, while white people are at tanning booths and sitting at beaches trying to get brown. Why don't you make up, bless God, your mind what you are, realize God made you who you are, God made you like you are, and be content with who and what God made you. Let me get on that curly hair a little bit, Miss Lisa. Anymore in America, people don't hire people because of their qualities or experiences anymore. Now when you go to get a job, it's based on your color, your gender, if you know what it is, or your political views. No one should be privileged or punished due to the color of their skin. That is racism. My daughter had to have a surgery. It was not only an expensive surgery, it was a dangerous surgery. So, Brother Travis, we went in to set up a program with paying the bill. I'm the type guy that believes you ought to pay your bills. All Christians ought to pay their bills. And so I sat down with a precious young black lady, sweet lady, knew her job. I have nothing but good to say about her. And she sat down and she looked at me, and we were, Brother Jones, getting the billing together for my daughter's surgery. And she looked at me and she said, are both of your daughter's parents white? I said, yes, ma'am, but what does that have to do with me paying my bill? She said, because if she was African American, I could give you a break. She said, well, let me ask you this. Are you and her mother married? I said, yes, ma'am, we're married. I said, why would you ask that? She said, because if you were shacking up, we could give you a break. She said, well, let me ask you one more question. And she wasn't being offensive. She was doing her job. She said, are you and your wife citizens of the United States? I said, yes, ma'am. We were both born here. And we love America. We've never been anywhere but America. I said, but why would you ask that? She said, because if you were illegal, I could help you with your bill. I said, now, lady, let me get this right. Because I'm an American, because I'm married, and because I'm white, I got to pay full price for a surgery that I could get a discount if I was African American, shacking up, or an illegal. She said, sir, I'm sorry. That's the way the system's set up. I said, the system's broke. America's broke. This country's broke. The bill ought to be the same whether I'm black, white, yellow, purple, or stark raven green. The bill ought to be the same. Whether I'm shacking up or married, the bill ought to be the same. Amen. Somebody, you know what I'm talking about. You know I'm telling it right. Never seen such a mess in my life. Somebody from Washington sent me a documentary the other day. When illegals come over here, it costs America almost $3,800 a month to take care of them. That includes housing, food, electricity, and sending them to school. We pay for that. It's almost $3,800 a month. Did you know the average retired or disabled person in America gets between $1,200 and $1,400 a month? Can you believe we are tripling the benefits of people that do not even belong in this country, and we're penalizing the people that have given their lives and broke their backs to make America what it is? I say to you, somewhere down the road, something's out of balance. Racism. It's a sad day in our country. You cannot condemn people over something they cannot help. I did not vote to be born white. And by the way, you white chalk hunkies, look up here. I'm not white. I'm Indian. So I can say anything I want because my folks was here before any of you ever got here. So drop dead, get over it, and leave me alone. Nobody should be punished over something they can't change. I didn't vote to be born Indian. I didn't vote to be born white. You didn't vote to be born your color. You can't penalize somebody because of that. It's a shame. Listen to this, Brother Travis. It's a shame that it takes battlefields, terror attacks, and funerals before America realizes that we can ignore the pigmentation of somebody's skin and find common ground that we all love our country. I promise you, you talk to these veterans that stood up here today when they're laying in the battlefield and the enemy is plowing down on them. They don't care if they're black or white. They don't care if they're conservative or liberal. They don't care what their stand is in philosophy, brother. You band together for your country. Racism is one of the biggest factors that will cause this country to go to war. Number two, the right to bear arms. The battle is on to either limit or eliminate personal citizenship, gun ownership. Politicians have made brave statements in these last elections that their intentions are to change or to remove the First and Second Amendment of the Constitution and the freedoms thereof. If we lose our voice and we lose our protection, we have yielded to a dictatorship, rule of law, and it'll be just like being under Adolf Hitler, and they will reign over us and control us and destroy us. You cannot remove guns from honest tax-paying citizens due to abuse. No more than you can take all the prescriptions out of drugstores because of abuse. No more than you can take my vehicle because somebody speeds. You must come back to a country where people are accountable for their actions. If some idiot shoots somebody else, don't blame me and don't come after my gun. It ain't my fault. past administration said this in California. You better watch that Southern crowd. They cling to their God and their guns. Well, let me say to that administration, you will never get God out of my heart, and you'll never get my gun out of my hand. All you have to do is leave me alone, and we'll get along fine. But I will do whatever I can to protect my family from all harm. Name one country in world history where crime went down due to gun control. Go to Chicago, where carrying a gun is against the law. There's so many dead bodies laying in the streets you can't even drive down the main highways. People killing each other. No responsibility for their actions and no value on human life. How can you condemn a nation that's jumped into a valueless view of life when every day we're killing 4,000 babies in an abortion clinic and slaughtering them from their mother? We've trained our nation. There's no value in life anymore. Kind of burns me up, these liberal egg-sucking politicians. They'll run around and scream about gun control, but standing behind them are 5 men with little earbuds in their ear, and they're not there to pray for them. Every one of them are security. Every one of them have a gun on them. And if it's good enough for you to have a gun, it ought to be good enough for me to have a gun. My life is just as important to me as your life is to you. So until you get rid of all your security guards, shut up! I advise everyone in our congregation, go get you a legal license so that you can carry a weapon and protect yourself and protect your family. People will shoot you in a restaurant. They'll shoot you at red lights. They'll shoot you in your home. They'll shoot you on the job. Don't laugh. Every one of these experiences has already happened in this country. And there may be a time in the future, God forbid, that a gun is the only thing that'll save your family from destruction. Many years ago, I was traveling all night on a Christmas Eve night. I am licensed, I'm legal, I'm certified, and I carry a gun. If you don't like it, don't carry one. That doesn't mean I'm going to put mine down. It ain't happening. Say, don't you trust God? Sure I do. It's you I don't trust. Me and God don't have a problem. We didn't have cell phones back then, Brother Corey. My wife and 4 kids were asleep in a motorhome. I stepped out of my motorhome and stepped over to a payphone about the distance of this platform away from my wife and children. It was Christmas Eve night, and before it got too late, I wanted to call my mom and dad and wish them a Merry Christmas because I had to travel all night long, and Christmas Day I was tied up in Texas, and I was in Louisiana that night. I didn't know it, but there was a carload of young black men sitting over at the corner of this gas station watching me. When I got out of my motorhome, I went over to the cell phone and I called my mother and we were speaking. While we were speaking, a large Electra 225 pulled between me and my wife and 4 children. 6 young, big, black, healthy men got out of that car. One of them came over to the back quarter panel on the side that I was talking to my mother. He said, "Hey, cracker, Polly want a cracker?" I said, "Man, I ain't fooling with you, bro. Just get a life." And he said, "Chalk. Never seen chalk talk." I said, "Man, I ain't fooling with you." I said, "Mom, look." I said, let me call you back in a minute. I got to take care of something. I didn't want my mom to get upset. Now, I got a wife and 4 kids sleeping over there. I hung the phone up. I said, "Sir, evidently you have a problem with the fact that I'm white." He said, "Oh, no, we don't have a problem with the fact you're white because we're going to get that mama and those kids out of that motorhome." Now, you understand, I got a car between me, and those other 5 men are between my motorhome and the car, and there's no way I can get to them. There's absolutely no way. My family's in danger. The door is unlocked, and this one guy's looking straight at me, much bigger than me, calling me cracker and chalk, and 5 guys are getting ready to go in my motorhome. And so I just did what any American would do. I grabbed him by the throat, pulled my gun. I said, "Hey, Bubba, you touch that door, I'm going to blow his head off, then I'm going to kill you." All of them jumped in the car without opening the door. All of them jumped in the side windows of that car. When they jumped in the car, they went off, the driver went off wide open down that apron out of that gas station, and it ripped the exhaust off that Electra 225. And son, he hit that road, bam, and it ripped the exhaust. But I swear 10 minutes later, I could still hear that car. Wah, wah, wah. I said, thank God for grace. Amen, thank God for grace. There is nothing wrong with protecting your family. The third thing that's going to throw us into a civil war is religious liberty. Thank God our president has been very positive toward religious agendas so far in his presidency. Radical left groups desire to pressure and to punish the freedom of worshiping God. Before a nation can declare to be godless, it must first eliminate all forms of public gatherings. Laws are trying to be passed daily to try to make the church conform to the boundaries set up by those that reject God and the Bible. Christians are sitting back behind their stained glass windows, comfortable, while the freedoms are being drained out of our state laws weekly. Lawsuits are filed consistently against preachers that dare to be bold and honest in their pulpit. I promise you, by this time next week, I'll be sued. I promise you, some idiot will try to bring a lawsuit against me, not even knowing that the First Amendment of the United States Constitution gives me the freedom of speech, whether I'm in a church, on a street corner, in my living room, or on top of a mountain. May I say to you churches, nowadays, because of fear and approval, men have laid back from preaching. We now have a generation of spineless, weak, soft, pansy preachers that trust in man more than they fear God. Churches want puppets and not preachers. They want orators and nobody with anointing. They want storytelling but no scripture. They want rubbed on the head without being rebuked in their heart. They'd rather pout than shout. They're more interested in money than they are the moving of the Holy Ghost. They'd rather be social than steadfast. We're laughing when we should be crying. We're playing when we should be broken. We're ignoring when we should be paying attention. We're dreaming when we should be facing reality. We're lazy when we should be busy. We're critical when we should be forgiven. We're blind when we should be watching. Church, wake up for God's sake.